Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Everything But Normal Podcast. I'm your host, David Boris, and today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be talking to you about this brand new podcast that I just made this semester here at Marywood University. I'm going to be talking to you about what you can expect from my podcast, where you can find me, how you can find me, and how you can potentially reach out to me if you want to find out about something weird, strange, or heard over this podcast. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right into the action. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is David Boris, and today is the pilot episode that we've all been longing to hear, as this has been held off due to weather in our area. And I'm kind of glad it's getting done finally. Not a lot of people can, say that the weather has affected the podcast, but when you commute, I believe that is only right that you have an excuse such as the weather to prevent you from making such a podcast. So I'm trying here. I'm trying to get this all organized, and the weather still isn't the best outside, that we all know. So for this episode, mainly, everyone, I'm just going to be talking about what you can expect from the podcast, future notes, news, kind of get the meet and greet from me as the host. And hopefully you stick around for the ride, as I feel that this podcast, I feel very good going into this podcast. I feel very confident. So without further ado, let me talk about myself a little bit as the host. So as you've heard probably a million times over, my name is David Boris. I am a junior here at Marywood University in Scranton, PA. My current major is public relations and advertising. I'm very active within the school itself. I am currently enrolled in 2 television shows on TV Marywood's YouTube channel. I am currently active with PRSSA and AAF, which are 2 groups that focus with public relations and advertising. Just starting this podcast. And other things I can talk about here, a lot of news that you're going to be hearing will come from either a source that you may never have heard of, and you may say it may be fake news, it may be from a fake company or organization. I feel that, all news has validity until you prove that it's not valid. So when you hear some news that I'm going to be talking about on the podcast, which I'll explain in a minute about, I feel that, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You can't instantly judge it and say, well, that's fake news because I haven't heard of the website. A lot of websites do produce quality content that, it's outside the big major networks like MSNBC and NBC and CNN. I look into those things, but I also look at past what they have made in the past, kind of going off of something that they don't really want to touch up on. And I feel that's very important as a journalist, is to dive out into what you would think would be kind of the fake news element, but what could actually turn into a really good quality news reporting utility that I feel people could use. So I always say, if you think that it's fake and you can prove that it's fake, it's probably fake. But when you have evidence to back it up, when you have the proof to support it, I think that you only have something good going for you. So just keep that in mind when you listen to future episodes, that if you do hear me source something that doesn't sound real and or something that you feel is kind of faked, and you don't feel the evidence that I'm going to use to prove that my theory or my opinion on said topic is out there, please, I will leave my email things in the comments, not the comments. I'll leave my email probably somewhere on the description of the page or whatever, and I'll review it. I'll review every email I get, and I'll make sure that the information I'm using is valid and not smudged up or marked over. I don't want to be that guy. Without further ado, everyone, we're going to dive right into a little small news story that I do want to make a quick note on, that I would not typically report on. And you may say to me, well, David, why are you doing a story that you won't typically report on? That's not a good pilot. Well, it's important because it's strange in a way, but it's strange to a point that I can report how strange it is and how different it is to, something that may be on the same levels of strangeness to it, but on the same level, I wouldn't expect you to fully take interest into diving deeper because I feel I'm going to sum the story up as well, and I'm going to keep tracking it as well in case something else does pop up. A conspiracy theory has also popped up when it came to, when it got reported to CNN International and a couple other news websites that reported this. So I feel it's very different in the sense that I could report this as a sports talk, essentially, but have it on a level of weirdness that you can almost kind of relate to for the future episodes. So without further ado, let me dive into the story for you guys. So the story takes place over in England. If you've never heard of the English Premier League, it is England's pretty much soccer league. It's the big top flight clubs over in England that battle to get to a championship spot. They make it to the Champions League. I won't go too into detail, but it's important to know that how the system works. So how it works is the top 6 teams make it to European Cup finals, championships, everything essentially. And what they do is they turn it into who can make it to the top flight, who can make it past relegation, which is when you get deranked into a lower set of leagues that is below the Premier League. What happens is the bottom 3 of the Premier League get bumped down into a bracket or another section of soccer leagues called the English Football Championship, the EFC they call it. That's where teams want to get to the Premier League and they have to fight to pretty much get to the top flight. It's important to note that because the team that we're going to be talking about, Cardiff City, they aren't a very well-known team. They aren't very high up in the standings. They currently stand, when I make this podcast, in 18th place, and out of 20 teams, the bottom 3 teams must get deranked, or they must get demoted, as they say. So when they get demoted, they go back down to a lower bracket and almost don't even get recognized. They still have their passionate fans over in England, but they're not going to be as loyal and getting enough attendance as, the English Premier League. So it's important to keep up in the Premier League and stick up with there. Emiliano Sala is the man of the hour that we're going to be talking about. He was Cardiff City's record signing. He was 28, and he pretty much was flying in an aircraft from pretty much Nantes in northern France to Cardiff in Wales. Now, Cardiff City is in Wales. Now, that's a good thing to mention. Wales and England pretty much have that little quirk that they allow each other into and play in each other's fields, and that was a good thing. But he was Cardiff City's record signing, which was approximately £15 million or $19.3 million. That's a lot of money for a little club that's in 18th place and came up from a championship spot last season. That's big. He came pretty much over and wanted to play for Cardiff. He was the biggest signing, and he was coming over in a single-tube turbine aircraft, which, if you know anything about, those things are very unsteady. I've been in one. As a little kid, I actually nearly got sick in one. But that's besides the point. Emiliano Sala was the record signing for the club and wanted them to succeed in, the Premier League. And he was potentially the game changer. The man was very well known, and he was just very good in France. They wanted him so bad. And he was on his way, and his plane crashed. So apparently, when the plane crashed, they sent an investigation team that lasted 3 whole days to look for this plane, and they could not find anything. It's also quick to mention that his plane had no signal, no anything to spot the plane, bring it down. It was very, very hard for anyone to spot, and they gave up after 3 days. When they gave up on the 3rd day, they kind of just thought he was dead, and all of Cardiff really mourned, and they had ceremonies. They had everyone put what his jersey would have been on the floor. Cardiff City posted a lot of pictures over Instagram, Facebook, pretty much saying, "Oh, we're mourning him." The typical, "Well, we're sorry for your loss." And they had a whole entire chant on their first home game back into Cardiff City. On February 3rd, when they all thought it was said and done, they found a couple objects of interest, quote unquote, said by CNN International, that potentially might have been him. So they went to investigate it, and they found in the wreckage, they found 2 plane seats, which could have been presumed to be his, and they dug deeper, and they found his body was inside of the wreckage of the plane, and that was the end of the mystery. It was all been said and done, and that was very recently. This was as of Monday, February 4th, so this is very, very new news. This is very current, and it's very strange because you won't often hear athletes often getting their plane crashed, or, they typically take like a good private jet, not a single turbine plane. So it's very different to hear that an athlete is actually injured and hurt getting to the club. So with the conspiracy then, there is another player in the English Premier League named Mohamed Salah, and he's kind of big in the English Premier League scene right now. He's currently Liverpool's one of their more top-end players. He scores a lot of goals for them. He gives good assists. He's very on the ball, very motivated, and he's very, very agile. Needless to say, someone put a controversy out there claiming that one Salah, or Mohamed Salah for this instance, didn't want him coming to the club. Again, I said earlier, I didn't believe it one bit, and I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't believe any evidence that any of these people claim that could have been Mohamed Salah planning this out. I just can't see it. Mohamed Salah is, I think, very good in his self-righteous respect, and I feel that he's a very honest man. He speaks from the heart, if you've ever heard him interviewed, and he's a genuine guy. But someone on the internet, and I'm not even going to list the source because that's just how bonkers this theory is, that this Mohamed Salah put out a hit for this other Salah just to prevent him from potentially gaining better access to a better player. And that's where Mohamed Salah wanted to maybe draw the line. And personally, again, I say it's unfactual, but again, that's just a theory, and it's out there. It's a developing story, and I'm going to keep up on it. I think this is a good place to wrap it up, everybody. This has been Everything But Normal podcast. I will, again, leave all my information if you would like to request to hear something that you heard or want me to dig deeper onto the podcast. I'm always pretty much here on campus and or by my email. So without further ado, everyone, this has been the very first episode of the podcast. Thank you all for listening thus far, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Have a good day, everyone, and remember, stay strange.